Well, welcome to the end of the year, everybody, on Conspirinormal. Welcome to the annual year in review episode that we do, where we just go through the episodes that we did in a particular year. And I've done one of these since 2015. And as I always say, if you want a good synopsis of Conspirinormal, you can go back and listen to those episodes. That's really kind of what they're there for, if you want a good idea of what we talked about and who the people that we had on. I think it goes back to like episode 60, and like we're in the 430s now, so there's a lot there if you want to go back to every end of the year episode, if you feel so inclined to do that to yourself.
We had a lot of good episodes this year. This year kind of felt like it just flew by, but when I'm going back and looking at some of those first episodes, it does seem like quite a long time ago.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, we started out, this is episode 433, or 434 rather, and 394 was the one we started out with.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to see the amount of episodes since we do this weekly, almost every week.
Yeah, we took some breaks here and there.
Some much needed breaks.
Especially after the conference, we took a break and then came back in November. But so we would just want to just go through these, and we're going to talk also about the future as well, and some of the things, ideas that we have, and how we feel about the show. And so no guest tonight, you just get us.
Give you some of these paranormal personalities.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about what was going on with ourselves and our lives this year, and along with the podcast. And I listened to last year's year in review and had a lot of the same themes, but we pointed out how 2021 was really liminal and still halfway in the COVID world.
Sure.
But 2022, people really got to get back out again, got back to business, got back to living life a little bit. It was an eventful year, and I think we did a lot of great work, and it was overall pretty productive.
Between the episodes that we did, I think we're about 40 of them that we did over the course of this year, and we did some live events. We did a couple of those. I can remember the one that we did with Dr. Future when the Georgia Guidestones got blown up.
Yeah,
we did one of those, and then for quite a few months there, leading up to the conference, we did our monthly meetups, which we will be starting back again in January. Don't know who we're going to get yet, but I'm sure that we'll find somebody. So just stay tuned for news about that. But yeah, that's so we did those, and those were on Friday evenings once a month. And if you guys want to see those, most of those are on our Patreon for the $10 level, so you guys can go back and watch that if you're really, really interested.
It was an eventful year. I mean, we had the Ukraine conflict pop off. We had the January 6th public hearings. We had they blew up the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, that was a big deal. There was a lot of there was some attention in the middle of the year towards the Georgia Guidestones, and we'll kind of get to that as we come to it. But let's just start going through these episodes that we did. Just any general thoughts on these that we might have. Technically, we started the year because it got posted on January the 2nd with the 2021 year in review. I won't review the 2021 year in review because you can go back and listen to it if you really want to. But then the first guest of the year, episode 394, we started off with Steve Berg. And I titled this one 14 Comedy in Weird Nebraska. And Steve later on was part of the conference that we did this year. And hopefully, we'll be doing a lot more with him in the near future. We talked about comedy and movie that he worked on, about the Skinwalker Ranch. And we talked about, now that he lives in Nebraska instead of LA, some of the things that he's studying out there, and some of the weird 14 events and weirdness that's going on in Nebraska, which that dovetailed right into the presentation that he gave at Strange Realities Conference this year.
Yeah, Steve has become a great new friend of the show, and really great guy, really great personality, and hilarious. We had a lot of fun with him at Strange Realities, and look forward to talking to him in the future, which might be coming up very soon from what I hear.
Yeah, let's hope so. So then we followed that up with Erica Lukes. First time we've had her on. We talked about the Skinwalker Ranch, and I titled that Skinwalker Ranch, What is Really Going On? That was a really good kind of eye-opening episode about some shenanigans that are going on at the Skinwalker Ranch, and what she feels might really be what is happening at the Skinwalker Ranch is kind of like more like some kind of like experiment or
maybe weapons testing and just
yeah
overall grifting and probably money laundering and who knows what else.
But also to add to that, the fact that Skinwalker Ranch is kind of just becoming like this kind of fun house for the rich and famous.
Yeah.
A place for them to go and have a weird paranormal experience. So there's a lot of entertainment aspects to Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And it being passed off. This was an interesting episode because there was a lot of, I would say, conceptions that I had from reading the Hunt for the Skinwalker book about probably like 15 years ago, and some of these ideas that were put down in that, and these events that supposedly happened. And Erica really kind of looks at that and says, oh, those may or may not have occurred the way that they necessarily were portrayed.
Yeah, there's a lot of narrative building and
right,
self-generating.
So the thought about what that means and all that. We follow that up with 396. Aaron Gullius returned to the show, and we had Aaron on a few times. I think a couple more times this year, not for the own show, but a couple of roundtable things.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and this was about his book called Conspiracy and Triumph,
which was excellent.
Yeah, very excellent book. And this was examining these conspiracy theories that have to do with kind of a triumphalist vision of history, and the fact that that these are going to allow a better world to come forth from these things. So a couple of things that we talked about. We talked about Nasara. We also talked a little bit about UFO disclosure too. And QAnon is also in there, although we didn't talk about that as much. But we did get into those couple of things, Nasara and the UFO disclosure movement, as being these kind of triumphalist kind of type of conspiracy theories.
And I always appreciate having someone who understands all the minutia of these weird subcultures like sovereign citizens and some of these Moorish groups, and it's fun to joke around with Aaron.
397, something that we hopefully will get back to here pretty soon as well. We started our Paranoid Styles series. This was chapter 1. I entitled this Conspiracy Creation, where we basically talked about conspiracy theory and some of the ideas that give rise to it. I guess, would you typify it as that?
Yeah, and some of the the kind of biggest overarching conspiracy theories that go back to the beginning of history have to do with creation, the dawn of civilization, Luciferian themes, those kind of narratives.
Yeah. And we're going to get back to those, I think, pretty soon. We'll get to...
Yeah, they take a little bit to put together.
They do. So. Yeah, we do a little bit more research for those than probably we do for like a guest-driven type of show, even though we read the books or listen to the podcasts and all that type of thing. 398 was the Pennyroyal crew. This was Nathan Isaac, Kyle Cadell, and Darian West, our good buddies from Somerset, Kentucky. They came on the show because the season 2 of Pennyroyal dropped, which you can also hear Surfiel in because he was in a few of the episodes.
And this was their second appearance?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. All together. Yeah. Of them together. We've had Nathan on by himself, I think, at one point. But
I think in anticipation of the previous year's Strange Realities.
Right. And so we talked about just kind of the themes that were going on in their podcast. I guess we got into a little bit of James Shelby Downer. I think we did.
I think we did a real deep dive for Patreon.
Yeah, we did.
Had some previously unreleased information in that. You can go check that out at patreon.com/Conspirinormal. It's still up there.
Yeah. And I think Go Rightly talks about some of that at the conference, correct? Was that some of the same stuff, or... Maybe I'm getting things muddled in my mind.
Possibly. I don't remember. There's a lot of down nerdy and factoids.
It was a while ago. 399. So we're coming up on the 400th episode here. Kiki Dombrowski returned. This was the second one that we had her on by herself. This was about her book called A Curious Future, which is about, what would you call it? Divining, I suppose.
Yeah, different divination techniques and systems.
Yeah. That we talked about. We talked about. I remember we talked about astrology, and we talked about some like some of the planet symbols and these type of things. The reason we did this, part of the reason that we did this, is because Kiki was the first person that we had do our Strange Realities meetup presentation for that, and she actually did that on tarot. And that was in late February. And
you can still check that out at the $10 level of the Mystic Crew at patreon.com/Conspirinormal.
That is up there as well, yes. All of those should be up there. Episode 400 followed that. This was not only the 400th episode, but this was the 10-year anniversary bash, I suppose. And we just had... several people that showed up. Joshua Cushion was there, John Tenney, Steve Berg, Kiki showed up, Dr. Future was there with us, Chris Corey, Vincent Treewell, Chris Ernst, Recluse showed up, I think, at one point. So
Stephanie Quick.
Yes. Was Stephanie Quick there?
Yep.
And we had a whole just like big party. And that was the 400th episode. Everybody talked about, I guess, kind of their thoughts on Conspirinormal, and just it was a really good time that we.
I think I need to revisit that to remember how we're appreciated.
I suppose so. Yeah. So after that, episode 401, I think I ended up doing this one. I think I did by myself. This was with Jason Andrews from the Paranormal Patio podcast. I called it Hanging Out on the Paranormal Patio. And I spoke to Jason about, of course, his podcast and how he got into the paranormal. And I spoke to him. We also spoke a little bit about the Knights of the Golden Circle and some of the research that he's done into that. And he's also got a really excellent podcast. We got to know him actually through the Pennyroyal guys. He goes down to Somerset to hang out quite a lot. 402, our good friend, Mr. David Metcalf. This is the fourth time we've had David on by himself. This is called Archives of the Impossible and Psychic Media. And I believe for most of that episode, we ended up speaking about his trip to the archives of the Impossible Conference at Rice University, and some of the experiences that he had there, and some of the people that he got to meet, and these type of things.
I think we also talked about his love for new age and cosmic disco music.
Yes, we did. And this was also because we were getting ready for David to do the second Strange Realities online events, and that was where we talked about
the Ingo Swann
disco album,
Stephen Halpern, Star Children.
Right, Star Children. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And he kind of used that as a lens to explore the popularization of a lot of those themes in the late 70s and early 80s.
He called that Star Children and Psychic Futures. So that was the second one of those. That is also available on our Patreon if you guys want to go check that out. Following Mr. Metcalf, we talked to Catherine Chilgen. This was about her book Shakespeare Suppressed, which is all about the Oxfordian theory of the Shakespearean authorship. And what that means is that these people believe that the works of Shakespeare were written by the Earl of Oxford, and some pretty compelling evidence. I lean towards this a little bit myself, although not fully, but it's kind of a cool, interesting historical mystery that we got to talk about. 404, W.T. Watson. First time we had him on a couple times in the year. Mysteries in the Mist. W.T. is a great Fortean writer, much in the vein of our good friend Joshua Cutchin, where he chose a certain topic and looked at that topic around different Fortean type of events. So in this case was the existence of mist and fog in weird supernatural and Fortean occurrences.
Yeah, like a reoccurring aspect.
Right. 405, Marco Azevedo, reverse engineering the flying saucer archetype. This was also in preparation for Marco's presentation that he did, which I thought was excellent. It was interesting because Marco and David both had 4-hour presentations, I think, or 3-hour presentations.
Something like that, yeah.
Marco's he's a graphic designer and an artist, and I think that influences some of his ideas about this. And we talk about the kind of the UFO archetype, shapes of, and so what I wrote here, we dig deep into where the archetype comes from, as well as how the shapes of craft and the form of their occupants have changed over time. So this was a real interesting show. A lot of good, interesting ideas.
It's really personal. That's what I really like about Marco's stuff. From his childhood impressions from early 60s and that kind of mid-century saucer imagery, and how it was imprinted on his young mind, and how it reflected what he calls the technological imaginal in the broader culture.
We followed this up, 406, with Delaney Bowers. We talked about folklore, urban legends, and conspiracy theories, and we kind of talked about the similarities and differences between those from a kind of folklore perspective, because Delaney is a folklorist, and I will tell you that she gave a very excellent presentation about treasure at the Strange Realities Conference this year.
About treasure hunting.
About treasure hunting, yes, and what that means from in that perspective.
I heard there was some hidden influence from some of the secret masters of the ancient circles of strange realities on that presentation.
There was, yes, that's true. 407 was another Paranoid Styles. This was the second one that we did. This was Secret Histories and Lost Civilizations. I believe in this one we covered obviously lost civilizations, but the ideas about Atlantis, and how these also reflect current ideologies and ideas.
What a timely discussion.
That was a timely discussion, because there's a lot that's in the later part of the year that's kind of become, especially with the Ancient Apocalypse documentary, that people have been looking at that a little bit more and more. 408, Walter Bosley. This is the 9th time we've had Bosley on. We've had Bosley on a lot on this show. Veiled Destinies, which was his 4th, I believe, secret missions book.
5th.
Okay, that's right. The Napoleon one is the 4th. That's the 5th of the secret missions books, Veiled Destinies. And we spoke to him. This is kind of more of like him kind of putting a lot of it together. Some of his ideas about Juan Cabrio's sword, more ideas about Hecate, and Walter also did one of the Strange Realities online events with us, and this was about his idea about what happened at Roswell, kind of drawing from a book that he wrote called Shimmering Light, which was about some experiences that his father had. That is also available on our Patreon if you would like to see it. We followed this up with Samantha Engel and Aaron Gullius. Aaron Gullius showed up yet again this year, Great Lakes Lore, talking about their podcast, Great Lakes Lore. And I believe there were some specific topics that we covered. We talked about Dogman, of course, because that's a big thing up there. The Mad Gassers, the Witch's Castle up there, and a giant turtle named Oscar, who was a large turtle that apparently lived somewhere in Indiana.
Yeah, they're a real great team, and that's an excellent podcast that really delves deep into some strange history in a particular area with some real professional historians.
Followed that up, one that I know was a personal favorite of yours. This was Terry Carter on treasure hunting. I called this The Infinite Quest. A little nice little title there. We had him on with Dave Altman in 2020. But this one we got to talk to Terry more by himself. Well, I'll let you talk about that one because I know that was one that you were really excited and passionate about.
Yeah, I was really proud to introduce this, I think, neglected subculture that is isolated from larger Forteana and paranormal subcultures, and that's the culture of treasure hunting, which is, really old and full of all these kind of paranormal, conspiratorial, and magical aspects. So it was great to inject that into all of our conversations because I've been very inspired by learning about the treasure hunting legends and lore, and it's really informed my way of researching, looking at things. I was really happy to get Terry in the mix. He's a great guy too. He's really like a folklorist of treasure hunting in the Utah area. That's probably the most active treasure hunting place in the States, and he's really out there doing the work and collecting all these legends and getting them recorded from all these old timers. His YouTube channel is just pretty crazy and amazing. I'd definitely recommend checking it out if you want some entertainment.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting stuff. That's for sure. Like I don't think I was really aware of just how much is subculture treasure hunting really is until we had him on. And but also there was like a lot of kind of supernatural stuff that was involved with it too. So like there's not only would they when they go on treasure hunting runs, they're also encountering like Bigfoot and shit too, like strange creatures and ghosts and all types of weird stuff
they're using
that they would encounter.
Magical methods to find treasure, and there's government cover-ups to keep you from the treasure, and everything is a lot more integrated.
411, Dave Altman and David Mason both of them from the movie Terror in the Sky, the documentary that came out this last year. This is about some of their experiences making that documentary, being in Southern California, and basically this all kind of revolves around the Nimitz, the USS Nimitz case from 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. That's the famous the famous Tic Tac video that you guys have probably heard of many, many times. And they did kind of like a reinvestigation of this with one of the guys that actually was on the Nimitz. And David Altman was really the one that really kind of put this whole thing together. And David Mason, it was one of the tech guys that was also a part of this. So this was a real interesting one, just talking to them about their experiences and some of the things that they found and some of what they thought, what their ideas were about it.
Yeah, it was quite the operation, and used just about every technological means to try to detect and observe these UFOs.
412, Dr. Future. This is Dr. Future returns. This is the 13th time Dr. Future by himself on Conspirinormal. This one we call Georgia Guidestone's Revelations Revisited. Now,
we tried to hop on this, right?
We did. We tried to hop on this. The reason that we did this, and it's interesting because we brought Dr. Future back about a month or so later, because this is when the Georgia Guidestones got bombed. That's not actually on the podcast feed. You can find that on our YouTube channel.
Oh, wait. So this was before they got bombed?
This was before, yeah. So you remember John Oliver did this segment
That's
about
right.
it because you had
Marjorie Taylor Greene?
No, it wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was another this lady. See, now I've forgotten her name. That's how important she is. But she was running for governor at the time, and part of her platform was to blow up the Georgia Guidestones, incidentally. And so John Oliver actually talked about this, not on like the main show, but he talked about it on his YouTube channel. This was over Memorial Day weekend. And Surfiel and I got on the phone with Mike. And
he mentioned
Dark Clouds Over Elberton.
Yeah, the documentary that
Right.
Mike was a part of.
Right. So we got
the main researcher for.
Yeah, so we got on the phone. We got on the phone with Dr. Future, and we convinced him to come on and to talk about this, because it had been since 2015 that we had done a show. I'd done a show with him about it, but we kind of just revisited that and some of his thoughts on if there were any updates and these type of things. We followed that up with episode 413, Soraya Askath, our good friend from Where Did the Road Go? This was about the Seth material. This was in preparation for a presentation that Soraya did with us at the end of June called Exploring Morphic Reality, which actually, if you go to our Patreon, is actually free. It was posted in July. You guys can watch it there. But we talked on this episode about the Seth material. And the Seth material is it's a group of channeled texts that was channeled by this lady in upstate New York. And I've always heard Soraya, every time that I've been on Where Did the Road Go, Soraya will talk about the Seth material. He'll talk about Seth. And because it's something that really, really interests him. And he finds the Seth material particularly interesting. And so after all that, hearing him talk about it, I was kind of like, well, I've never really just done a show about it. And so that's what we talked about, was mostly about the Seth material. And we talked about some of the books that he was reading as well. And 414, we got Vincent Trewell. This is the first time we had Vincent on. Searching for the Weird Part. And this was talking about Vincent's podcast, which you guys can go here, called The Weird Part. And we talked about a lot about wild animals. It's a kind of weird wild animals spotted in North America, and stuff that's unusual, like tigers and stuff like that. Giant skeletons, really weird prophets, and a lot of other stuff that we talked about with him. And then I think we did a Patreon with him about the shrine to the Virgin Mary that's in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. That was also a Marian apparition that's not approved by the mainstream Catholic Church.
He's kind of a generalist like us as far as being interested in all kinds of weird stuff. So it was really a pleasure to talk to him. He's been one of the most diehard Conspirinormal supporters.
Absolutely.
For a long time.
The most diehard Conspirinormal.
Yeah, he's definitely down.
And you guys just heard him not too long ago. on an episode 2 episodes ago as well. So we'll definitely have Vincent back for some of the things that we're planning coming up in 2023. Moving right along, 415, Paranoid Styles. This was the 3rd episode that we did of that. I called this one Classical Conspiracies. I try to use a lot of alliterations lately. It's just a thing with me. So we talked a lot about some of the political conspiracies of the ancient world. Spent a lot of time talking about the Catalan conspiracy that took place in the late Roman Republic, right before the early Roman Empire. And talk a little bit about kind of like separation of Judaism and Christianity, and some of the ideas that contributed to the rise of anti-Semitism.
Is that the latest Paranoid Styles?
I think there might be one after that.
I don't know. I think that's the latest one.
We will see.
Okay.
That might be the latest one. You may be right.
Well, after that...
that was back in like July. I thought
we've been kind of bullshitting.
Oh, no, there's another one.
Oh, okay.
All right, so 416, Joshua Cutchin returned to the show. Joshua's been on the show many, many times. He's been a part of a lot of stuff that we've done. Ecology of Souls. This was talking about the first part of his 2-book series, Ecology of Souls. And we talked a lot about near-death experiences, the idea of psychopomps. In other words, animals are symbols that have to do with the dead and the trip to the underworld, ideas like soul traditions, and then talked about the connection of fairies and fairy lore to all these type of traditions. Lot to get into there. And Josh did pull a lot from those 2 books in a presentation he did for us in the month of July, called The Understanding the UFO as a Death Symbol. Reason we did that with Josh is because I thought he was not going to be able to come to Strange Realities, but he ended up being there anyway. And we were very grateful to have him because he ended up doing a round table for us that night on a Saturday night.
But yeah, like the books, we definitely had to split this up into a few parts.
We came back.
We might even have another one. But
it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, but Ecology of Souls is really, kind of his most current magnum opus. But he's quite the prolific researcher, and everyone has a lot of respect for Josh.
For sure. 417, W.T. Watson. This is the second time we had W.T. on. I talked to him about his book called Canadian Monsters and Mysteries. I think this is one. Yeah, I think this one, it was just me and him. We talked a lot about monsters and cryptids and things that are specific to Canada, which is where he's actually from. He lives in the United States now, but he's from, I believe, like the Ontario area. And so there's a lot of stuff in that book that I had no idea. I had no idea that I never even heard of. A lot of interesting stuff. 418, Mark Schaus returned. I had Mark on way back in probably 2016 or so. This was talking about a book that he wrote because he does a Russian history podcast, and the book is called Understanding Putin, A History of Russia Through Its Rulers. And this was mostly about part 1. And of course, this is a very timely topic. But part 1 was from the time of the first, I guess, Rorik, who was the first ruler of Russia, and down to the Russian Revolution in 1917. And then part 2 continues on from there. But I don't think he's put part 2 out. But this one we just really talked about, Russian history. And of course, being a very timely topic, was everything that's going on in Ukraine now, and what he kind of felt was the impetus and why all this was really going on. And let's say that I got somebody say that well, why should we understand Putin? Well, the book is just trying to understand the mindset of Putin. That's how I understood it, and they're inside the mindset of Russia. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it provided some pretty good context for Russian history and some of the fears and ambitions that have led to the predicament we're in right now.
Yeah, for sure. Followed that up with episode 419, Nick Valenzuela. I called this one Stirring the California Creepypasta because that is the title of Nick's blog, California Creepypasta. Nick also works for Paranormality magazine, and Nick came to the conference, the Strange Realities conference in 2021 to actually interview myself and Sergio. And but in this episode, we talked to him about the Fresno Nightcrawlers, which is something that he's gotten to investigate personally himself. Let's talk about it. Stay at a haunted hotel, searching for a lake monster, all kinds of just interesting Fortean things that we talked about. And he also did an event for us as well, which I thought was really cool from his own experiences and his own investigations, motifs of high strangeness, and looking at those different motifs and how they fit into his own investigations. So we got a lot of kind of personal anecdotes from him in that presentation as well. Yeah,
and he writes in this classic occult detective investigative style, where he goes to these places and will stay there, and those articles can be found in these different issues of Paranormality magazine.
Absolutely, which I saw them when I was in Point Pleasant at the Mothman Museum. They were selling them, and our article was in there about the conference, which is pretty cool. All right, 420. Really missed an opportunity with episode 420, but Paranoid Styles.
Should have got PD Newman on.
Yeah, should have. Chapter 4. We talked about blood libel and medieval hysteria. So this was the last one that we did. All the way back in August. We've been slacking on Paranoid Styles lately, but this one I talked about, obviously, about the blood libel, about how that in a lot of ways mirrors a lot of modern conspiracy theories, and how some of this things medieval hysteria, like the St. Vitus's dance, but we spent much more time on blood libel and looking at that and some of its influences now down to the present day.
That harkens back to our episode with Richard Spence about the history of anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
Yeah, put those together to listen to those. Trying to put a lot more history stuff because it's one of my big passions, and I'm trying to kind of put that a little bit more into Conspirinormal lately. 421, Robert Guffey. 5th time we've had Robert on. I always love having him. This was about his book Operation Mindfuck, which was based on a series of articles that he did for Salon the previous year. And this was all about the QAnon movement. Mm-hmm. And it's called Operation Mindfuck, QAnon and the Cult of Donald Trump.
You said it. Now they're gonna take down this video.
There we go. How conspiracy memes that have been around forever have seeped into QAnon, and looking at what the what the future holds.
Excellent book, and always a pleasure talking to Robert.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we'll definitely, I'm sure we'll have him back on. I really want to get him to do one of the presentations for us as well. Okay, so we started the countdown at the end of August for the Strange Realities conference in October. And the next episode we did a series of these, 422, was Strange Realities Conference Preview Part 1. And this one was Samantha Engel, Tim Banal, and Aaron Goulias. So we talked to them for that one. And those are also available on YouTube for you guys to watch as well. We actually stream those live whenever we do those. 423, Dean Bertram, UFO Culture and Mysterious Libraries. I'm really happy to have Dean on. He's somebody that I literally had found out about maybe like a month or so before. He's got an excellent podcast called Talking Weird and another one called Mysterious Library that also are videos on YouTube, and I understand you've been watching Mysterious Library.
Yeah, there's some really great ones on really influential texts, like the Morning of the Magicians one was one that I checked out lately that I really liked, and just going through some of the most influential texts that have informed Forteana, conspiracy theory, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we will definitely have Dean back on at some point as well. But Dean is actually a PhD, and I think he's originally from Australia, and he's been researching UFO culture of the United States, and we talked a lot about some of the books that the things that he's really into. Dean's a super smart guy, so expect to see more of him on the show. Strange Realities. We did 4 more of these previews. I'll just kind of go through these for episode.
We did 5.
Yeah, we did. We did 4 more. Dean kind of broke it up a little bit.
Okay.
So in part 2, we had Kiki Dombrowski, John Tenney, Steve Berg, and Mike Hughes. They were on the second one. Part 3, we were trying to get everybody that we could that was being a part of this 2022 conference. Melody Blackthorn, David Metcalf, Nathan Isaac, and Adam Go-Rightly on part 3. That was in the middle of September. And part 4, we got Micah Hanks, Delaney Bowers, and Olaf Phillips. And finally, part 5, we rounded it out. And we got Chris Ernst, Bryn Collier, Recluse, Soraya, and Timothy Renner. And after that, we did the conference in the middle of October, and then we took a much needed break for a month.
Yeah.
I mean, we've kind of beat the conference to death, but if there's anything that you want to say about it, I really felt that it was a really, really great success, and we got to hang out with a lot of cool people that we always wanted to, especially somebody like Adam Go-Rightly.
Yeah, I was really honored to hang out with Adam, and I saw the most important thing is that fellowship, like we always talk about, and all the hallway conversations, like I always say.
Yep.
It was,
and outside the hotel, and
yeah, it was very
Tim
interesting.
Banal shenanigans, and
a lot of strange happenings that will be forever sealed in the vow of secrecy taken by the members of the Ancient Circle of Strange Realities.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so bringing this in for a landing here, the last few episodes, 428, Dr. Richard Spence. We talked to him. I call this one Occult Crimes. This was based on his Great Courses series called Crimes of the Century. But as I was talking to Dr. Spence to get him on, he told me that he was doing another one for Wondrium called The History of the Occult. And so,
which is very good.
Which is very good. And we talked all 3 of those. If you guys get a chance to see the History of Secret Societies, Crimes of the Century, and the Secret History of the Occult. All 3 of those are really great series. You can find all of them on Wondrium. I will go ahead and just pimp Wondrium because I think it's amazing. It is every, like, all the Great Courses stuff and everything that you could possibly want.
Yeah, I think Spence is probably one of the best people at making sense and putting together some of these murky worlds, like occult murder, mind control, and secret societies, and the history of the occult. I mean, these are total labyrinths that can take you a decade to get a grasp on, but he will succinctly make everything make sense.
Yeah, so when we talked about the Zodiac Killer, Charles Manson, son of Sam, and then he went into the Monster of Florence stuff, and then somehow we ended up talking about the assassination of Franz Ferdinand.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up doing a Patreon episode about was it George Hunt Williamson?
Mm-hmm.
one of the early UFO contactees, and so just like always super stuff. Like you can just listen to Dr. Spence. He's a wealth of knowledge, absolute wealth of knowledge. 429, follow that up with Josh Cutchin returned to talk about ecology of souls, this time derived more from the second book. Talk about altered states of consciousness, shamanism, UFO occupants as the dead, and we even talked about the experiences of Whitley Strieber in that, and what Josh thinks is going on there. So yet again, just another excellent interview with Josh. Honestly, you guys, we kind of just took it easy through the rest of this year, talking to some people that we had talked to before. But episode 430, you guys have heard it recently, Timothy Renner. That's the fifth time Renner's been on by himself, of course, of a Strange Familiars podcast. He has a new podcast called The Flowered Path, which is all about saints. And we talked some about Marian apparitions, talked a lot about Tim's kind of reacquaintance with the faith of Catholicism, but we covered quite a few of the saints that he's already covered in just the short time that he's been doing this podcast.
Excellent new podcast and very easily digestible,
for sure,
short episodes.
431, Gary Stevens, our good friend from down under, about his History in the Bible podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. Really enjoy it. It's something I've listened to over the course of the last year, and he's apparently ending it fairly soon, but you guys cannot recommend it enough if you want to know anything about history as it applies to the Bible. Gary digs really deep. Several hundred episodes, I think, now. But we talked to Gary about, how he started his podcast, history of the writing of the Bible, what was written when, and how it reflects the history of the ancient world. So yeah, if you guys have not heard that one yet, I highly recommend it. Our show that we did with him and also his podcast. Follow that up with 432, Mystic Crew Roundtable, end of the year edition. You guys were coming in for a landing. Chris Corey and Vincent Treewell. We talked a lot about the Ancient Apocalypse series that Graham Hancock put out, and some of the studies that Vincent has done about the John Benet Ramsey case and some of his thoughts on it. We also talked about those weird murders in Moscow, Idaho, which I really haven't heard much about.
I don't think there's a whole lot to hear,
to really say. And of course, the episode before this one with our good friend Dr. Future, who always ends the year with us. 14th time we've had Dr. Future on by himself, and you guys can go back and listen to that. It's 2 hours and I think 30 minutes of Dr. Future goodness.
Pretty epic year, if you really think about it. I think the program continues to get better, and we stick to the, more of what we're good at, which is taking deep dives, building context around these subjects of the paranormal, conspiracy theory, weird history, all this kind of shit.
Right. So we want to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the next year. I already got a couple of guests scheduled in January, but we're going to talk about some like what are kind of like format changes that we are going to do. Okay, so we want to talk about some of what's going to happen in 2023, or at least what we think is going to happen in 2023. As far as we're concerned. So Servian and I've been talking, we're going to try to do going forward as far as the format of the show and how we're going to put out the show release. We are going to start doing 3 episodes a month, 2 of which are going to be guest oriented episodes. And the third one will either probably be these Paranoid Styles episodes, or some of them may actually be roundtables, kind of in the format of what we just did not too long ago with Chris Corey and Vincent Treewell.
Or some loose current event based, current discussion type of conversations just with us sometimes.
Yeah. So we're going to have more shows that just have us, at least one a month. And the 3 episodes per month thing is just to kind of give us a little bit of a break, because we're also going to be doing the Strange Reality stuff at the same time. Like I said before, hopefully in January we are going to be starting back probably later on in January with the Strange Realities presentations. So those are going to be our monthly things that we're going to be doing for Conspirinormal / Strange Realities. So come check those out. And as far as the status of the conference this year, we haven't really given it too much thought, but we will
play
see.
it by ear.
We're going to be playing a lot of things by ear, but there's a lot of great things down the pike that we're going to be doing. But I think just, we got lives, we got busy lives, and we're just trying to just kind of give ourselves, somewhat of a break every single month. Do you have any thoughts or anything you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, we just want to relieve some of that pressure that we feel to, deliver so much content. I think we've been doing a pretty good job giving platforms to a lot of folks. And, like Adam said, we've got our own lives, and this definitely is not our career, to say the least. It's definitely a labor of love. But sometimes, you can get easily overextended on your labors of love. So we just want to keep having fun more than anything. And I'm sure that happens. That's
right. And as far as Patreon goes, we want to do at least 3 Patreons a month that we can. And I've got some ideas about possibly doing some other interesting things with Patreon besides just doing extra little episodes. So just kind of stay tuned for that if you're on our Patreon feed. But there's a lot there already, guys, that you guys can go back and revisit. And like I said, any of those Strange Realities events that we're going to do every month, those are also going to be on there for you guys to watch as well. They are $10 for our $10 Patreons.
Yeah, and I think if anything, really, this is going to free up some time to dedicate to some new and fun Patreon material and these Strange Realities based events.
Yeah. And we'll just, we're going to be playing a lot of things by ear, but we've got some great episodes scheduled for you guys in January. So I think that's pretty much it, if you want to call it. It's been an interesting year, guys. I want to thank everybody for listening. All you guys that are out there, I want to thank our patrons for contributing to us, helping us keep things going. And
we really do appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, and Sergio can tell you, as always, where to find the Patreon.
You can join in that number of Conspirinormalists at patreon.com/Conspirinormal. For the $5 a month level, you get access to our episodes and communications. And at the $10 level, you get to join the Mystic Crew, which entitles you to viewing all of these Strange Realities monthly events we've been talking about. We've also got some things planned for that, special interactive things. And at the top level, $20 and up, you become a member of the ancient circle of strange realities, and all of the mysteries of Conspirinormalism are revealed to you.
That's right. And especially want to thank Sergio for sticking with me. Sergio's coming on his 5th year of being a part of this. So most of Conspirinormal now has had Sergio as a co-host.
Oh, wow.
All right, guys. Well, stay tuned. We'll be back in 2023 on Conspirinormal.